Welcome everyone to day 3. I'm super excited to keep continuing the discussion we have about redefining power for women, and I'm so excited. My speaker today is Abbey Dyer-Amonette, and she has a lot to say about how we can be powerful and how we can utilize our voice. And I would love to hear from you. What does power mean to you?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Power for me means that we're really able to step into our own strength. We are able to be ourselves. We are able to not be small. We're able to take up a room when we're there. And we're able to really help others. I think power is only good if you're willing to help other people and really serve others.
I do agree with that. And when was the first time you thought about, with the work that you do, that you may be lacking a little bit of that power to step out, to go after everything that was something that lit you up inside?
Sure. So I had a situation where I went into the corporate world and I felt really good. I felt really confident. And I, in some ways, was seen as aggressive instead of what I would have thought was assertive. And so I ran into a situation where I was kind of knocked down a couple of pegs. Somebody thought that I was aggressive. They ended up feeling rubbed the wrong way from one circumstance that we went through in a meeting together. And it was kind of a black mark for a long time for me. And you had to work on that on the inside, like figure out, did I do something wrong? Is that really me? Is that other person? Was there a little bit of both? And so it took me some time to work through where that really belonged, the ownership of that. And I definitely learned something from it. But I also came out feeling even more like I needed to represent my voice and stand up and lean in and be somebody who wasn't afraid to say what I really thought.
Now, when you say voice, I would like you to just frame it for our audience. Obviously, we all speak, we do it every day, but I always refer to it as speaking with conviction comes from a sense of self-worth and from that power within, without, how do you put it, being shrill or trying to have to be louder to get your point across. How do you, what's your nugget for the audience to go, okay, well, if you want to work on your voice, you need to look within. Give us a bit of reference point on the connection that you have between the voice and your inner landscape, as I call it.
So for me, it's about, I call elevating your voice, right? We all speak, but finding what you really care about and the things that you're going to be able to accept and the things that you're not, and you're really going to put your voice out there, put yourself out there, put your heart and how you really feel about things out to others. You have to be brave, right? And that's tough sometimes, especially if you're looking at people who have more seniority than you do, or you're newer to a particular organization. You really have to look at that, find yourself being comfortable even when it's uncomfortable. And just look inside and say, okay, I know that I can do this. I know that my voice matters and that what I have to say has the opportunity to really help other people. And then you really don't have a choice. You've got to go out there and use your internal passion to serve other people.
I like the point of serving other people, because I think as we go through evolution in our careers, we're often not the same people we were when we were girls and then into young adulthood. And when we step into our careers, we often find roadblocks. And I remember through my journey, there was times when it was feeling really frustrating to me that I wanted to go places, yet there was a little bit of a hierarchy and structure that wasn't designed for me to go places I wanted to be, because I felt like I really want to have it all and want to do it all. How do I traverse the conditioning and something that we've often been given, depending on where we grow up in our field that we have. How do we tap inside to really light that courage up? Because it can be a really big deal for women to be outspoken, because we often have this thing like, oh, you know, the nice girl mentality. And I think we still rub against some of the structures that we may find in our work environment, where people go, they view us a certain way, and here's somebody go, oh, no, I'm a little different. Speak a little bit into that for the audience.
I am very much about community, and I am about building a group of people around you that support you. And that can be done multiple ways. When I think about the corporate landscape, I think about things like ERGs, employee resource groups, or community volunteering that's done in offices. If you're still in a brick and mortar office, those opportunities really allow you a chance to get to know other people and allow you to maybe step up into a role that you don't necessarily have in your particular business organization at this point. So I think it's really great to leverage other opportunities where you can be a leader, even if it's not in your particular organization. And I also think that surrounding yourself over here is important, but it's also important to really build a strong feminine leadership group, someone that you consider your mentor, someone that you consider your sponsor, a coach, someone that can really support you. And oftentimes we have blind spots, all of us. And so when we have those blind spots, we don't see some of the things that other people see. And you often have inside you exactly what you already need. It's just kind of a mirror. You need somebody else to help you see that.
You mentioned mentors and coaches. Who has been somebody in your field and your journey that really helped you break out of your shell, so to speak, to really become the powerful woman that jumps off the screen today?
So I would consider her more of a sponsor than a mentor. And the difference between those two really quickly is, one is somebody you go to where you might have a problem and you're looking for them to help you solve that problem. That's a mentor. A sponsor is more somebody that talks about you in senior leadership circles when you're not around, about how capable you are, and helps you look for new opportunities. I had a woman that I worked with, and the turning point really came for me when she came up to me and said, you know, you're working in this particular area, but if you really want to grow your career, you need to do this. And it was one of those situations, and I talked to people about this in my own coaching and mentoring, is that sometimes you got to say yes, right? In fact, I would say yes more than you say no, right? And so she gave me an opportunity to take a stretch into an organization I didn't know anything about, but I trusted her to help guide me in the right direction. And I said yes. And as a result of saying yes, my career skyrocketed from there. I had lots and lots of opportunities because I had somebody who was that trusted person who really believed in me and helped me find that braveness inside.
I like that. I think the community aspect is important. And I think especially when we climb the career ladder, there's the misnomer that the air gets thinner the further we get up to the top. What would you say to somebody that starts out in life in terms of overcoming that fear, that uncomfortable feeling? Because I mean, naturally we would shy away from that, and we don't want to necessarily push ourselves into something, but it's a very, very fine line of being pulled along. Like you said, you've had an opportunity and it stretched you as a result.
Sure. So now I would say I probably do want to push you into something. I like to push the people that I mentor and coach lovingly along, for sure. I would say look for people who share your values. So when I think about helping people now from a mentoring perspective, trying to find someone, I would look for people who are in other parts of the organization. I talked about employee resource groups. If you are a part of a particular group. We have, where I work, a women's ERG and an LGBTQ ERG. And you either could be part of that affinity group or you could be an ally for that affinity group. Either way, you're going to find people who are leaning in your organization that are interested in making your organization better and align with people who have those values. Because I guarantee you, if you do that and you take just one little step, right, to say, do you think you could help me? I can tell you that, do you think you can help me conversations? I've never had anybody say no.
Do you still get speed wobbles, or have you got this whole thing down pat? How do you, and I mean, if we do have wobbles, quite often we're not actually openly putting it out there, but I think part of your power, like you said, is being able to give yourself the permission to ask for help and to reach out because it is there for you. But in terms of when you catch yourself like, oh, there's a little bit resistance, what is your reaction when you catch yourself in situations like that?
That's a really great question, because as I've risen in my career, I'm in a position now where I get a request, and it's because the president of our company, the CEO of our company, is interested in an answer. Mm-hmm. And so from where I started, right, as somebody who processed and the levels between us were so deep, right, to now be that close, I will tell you that I still, kind of, and be transparent with other people as you work with other people, because the fact is we all have some level or some person that makes us kind of make that face like, oh, I'm gonna have to respond to that, or wow, that person is the blank. And I typically lean on someone if I am uncertain about how I should respond, or I feel like I need somebody, like, please take another look at this, right? I drafted this, but it's going to the president and the CEO. So, so I lean on resources. One of the things that I love in what I do is I connect people. And so I've got a giant network of people because that's something I love to do. If somebody needs help in this space, in fact, I had 2 calls this afternoon where that's exactly what I did. I simply connected people to each other who needed each other in this big, giant space that we have.
How do you hone in on values and integrity? Do you make time consciously to step back, to review things, and what is still in alignment and integrity? Because obviously alignment with your values quite often has a direct impact on how we show up powerfully or not powerful when it's out of alignment. Do you want to speak a little bit into that?
Absolutely. So alignment is incredibly important to me. And I think about it personally and professionally. And for me, they kind of go like this. It's hard to separate them at this point. They're really one and the same, especially with all of us working at home. You are in the same space. We continue to get closer and closer. For me, I have a morning routine. So from a personal perspective, I have a meditation routine. And if you were somebody like me who was like, meditation, I can't sit still for that long, mine is 5 minutes. But that is really how I ground myself in the morning, and I get ready for the day and really kind of position myself to be that leader that I want to be. From a professional perspective, I spend a lot of time on strategy. And so it is really important to me. In fact, I have my strategic priorities for both corporate and my business up on the wall. And I am literally looking at it all day long. Like, does this fit into what I want to accomplish this year? And you have to make decisions. And sometimes those decisions are hard because you're like, this is going to take resources and time I don't have. It doesn't fit, right? So sometimes it is also the power of boundaries and being able to say no and really keep to what you said your priority was.
How does it work with the interaction you have with the teams around you, the people you work with? Because I mean, when people hear the word power in business, we quite often associate this with the traditional from the top down, do as you're told kind of attitude. How do you turn your own power that you exude in your day-to-day life into empowering others?
Absolutely. I would consider myself, and kind of the buzz term that is used, is a servant leader. So my job is really to make the people that I work with, and that term has definitely changed over the years, right? Whether people worked for you or you work with them. For me, it's the people that I work with. And it's part of my job to empower them. And I would much prefer to help my team make their own decisions, and I be there to remove the barriers for them. If they're running into a situation where they need my voice, they need my escalation ability, they need my dollars, that's where I want them to come to me. I empower them to make the decisions because they know the business, right? When we get confused sometimes in leadership, it is when we forget who does the work.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, that's my goal, is to help them feel empowered to be able to make decisions, and ultimately somebody to take my role at some point and me go on to my next opportunity.
I like that, because I think the responsibility that comes with holding power in an environment where you foster new talent and you growing existing structures, I think it's a very fine line, and I like how you frame that for the people listening. Now, have you ever come across or been at the receiving end of, being at the end of a power structure where you had come across some person or superior where they constantly wanted to control you in terms of power over you rather than working with you?
Absolutely. So as you can imagine, in 25 years, that's happened more than once for me. So it happened early on in my career, and I was pretty discouraged. But the thing that was kind of a joke sometimes in corporate is, if you have a manager that you don't connect with, you don't really feel good about, that's likely to change, because managers change a lot within organizations. So sometimes, and in that situation, I stuck it out, right? She left before I did. Now, today, I would likely make a different decision. And I would say, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I had what I would say is the second sort of situation in my career that was like that. And I found another role. So early in my career, I didn't have the foresight to realize that there are a lot of jobs, right? There aren't just a lot of jobs in your company. There are a lot of jobs in all companies, right? And I think we sometimes feel really stuck and don't feel like we have choices. And we often have to take a step back and go, wait a second, this is one company in one place in one country, right? That there are literally thousands and millions of them. And likely it's often that you can change organizations within your own company and be able to find a space that is a better fit for you.
Now, you said something really important where you said you stuck it out. And obviously that must be a difficult situation to be in when you stuck it out. Now, you have now grown so much into your corporate role as well as your business. How did that play out? Did that affect all of your life because of what happened at work? I mean, the dynamics these days can be a bit fluid, especially after the pandemic we come out, when it's sort of all blurred a little bit. How do you recognize that, and how do you come back from feeling stuck for so long?
I think of mindset as really a practice, right? We get up every day and we have, unfortunately, we do kind of these negative forces coming at us. And they are in the news, they are people talking, they are something you overhear as you're walking by. And so for me, the practice of positive thinking, I think of it kind of like practicing yoga or something else. We really have to fill our minds with things that are positive. And so for me, depending on what I'm going through, depends on how many different tools I feel like I need. So meditation, I talked about, yoga, exercise, any of those things that help with your stress, and help you give yourself a chance to really take a step back from that situation that you're in, are incredibly helpful in those situations. And for me, when I had that happen, I needed more of those supports, right? I needed more trusted advisors that I could lean on. And eventually, right, over time, you've got more positive things coming in, and you come out of that situation where you had more negative things coming in.
I like that. And that leads me into, you obviously have boundaries. Part of being and redefining your power for yourself is how you lead yourself, which you beautifully framed about finding things to do. But for boundaries and having that was, how do you enforce boundaries without that aggressive notion, or the feel like you have to push your boundaries?
Absolutely. So I would say that comes in a couple of different ways. One of the ones that I think a lot of people struggle with, and I absolutely have, is work-life balance, right? How do you make sure, especially where we often work at home, that you don't simply work all the time, right? So you really have to, from my perspective, go back to your strategy, go back to and I'll use myself as an example. My son is my why. Right. I do all things really because of my son and what my son needs. And so when I think about it and I look at my values, and my top value being my family is the most important, I line that up against what expectations I'm being asked to do. And I say, does this fit? Am I having to make a decision that supports my family or doesn't support my family? And from a work-life balance perspective, I have very intentionally designed the way that I work. So I moved from an office job to a work-at-home job so I could move and I could really be anywhere that I wanted to be in the country. I then changed organizations because the role that I had was 60 hours a week and I traveled all the time and I had a newborn. So you really have to be proactive in what you're doing. It isn't something that happens to you, right? And I think for me, over time, I've realized that, and one of my favorite quotes is, I'm not the victim, I'm the lighthouse. And that's Gabrielle Bernstein. And so you really have to kind of look at yourself and go, okay, am I making things happen or are things happening to me? And get that straight in your mind.
I love that. The lighthouse. I think that holds a lot of truth in who we become as we step out of things that are out of alignment, because I think as women in particular, we are so much more happy or fulfilled when we honor what our needs are to be all of the things, because I think we have careers, we are mothers, we are sisters, we wear a lot of different hats, and it can often get lost in pursuing a career goal. And the structures are not always fitting. So I think it's a great testimony that you put those stakes in the ground to go, this is my priorities, and I proactively go after what underlines my values and the way I want to live my life. What I find fascinating as well, that you have your feet in both camps, you both corporate as well as being a business owner. When was the point in your time, and was there anything at a particular an event where you said, oh, I think I'm going to go out on my own because this is calling me? When was there any ginormous event that goes, oh, I'm doing this on my own now? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say I am definitely one of those people who, nobody in my family is really an entrepreneur. But I have had that drive since I was young. So I look back at it and I go, well, it's really been a long time that I have had that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
But it was in a situation where my role was really tough from a corporate perspective. I had probably one of the most difficult things that ever has happened to me in corporate. And that was the first round of job eliminations I ever had to go through. And that's incredibly stressful. When you care about the people that you work with, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult as a leader. And so I needed something to help me distract. I needed something that made me happy and that was creative. And it really came about from needing an outlet that was different than what I did in my corporate role. And so that's kind of what started the journey. Now I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur, but that's how
I like that, serial entrepreneur.
That's how it originally started.
And in terms of your juxtaposition of doing both, do you ever gonna see yourself, you know what, I think I'm just going to continue with the entrepreneurial route because it supports me and I'm going to leave my corporate? Or do you still feel that pull of empowering the next generation to maybe either have the courage to step out and do things themselves, or really lovingly push them into their full potential in leadership with your own power that you touch with everyone around you?
It's such a great question. My answer is, I don't know. I really do like what I do from a corporate perspective. I am not somebody who wants to run away, right? That is miserable in what they do. So eventually I'll have to retire. So at some point, I will retire from corporate, and I absolutely envision myself continuing to be an entrepreneur for forever.
The beacon that you are, what's next for you in terms of, there's another big calling, a big push that I may be called to?
Yeah. So for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a really important area. I have felt passionate about it a really long time, since I started in corporate and maybe even before that. Being from the Southern United States, I recognized the inequality that existed. And so I am likely to be involved in social justice and those types of things, definitely raising money and giving money to nonprofits in my community that support my values.
Is there anything in particular where you go, well, I'm from the Southern United States, is a statement where you go, how does it play out when it comes to inclusion and diversity from your experience?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say it's a couple of things. When I think about corporate and I think about some of the things we talked about related to voice, there is very much, or has been for me growing up, where children and women were to be seen and not heard. Wow. And so for me, that is unacceptable. that is not something that works for me.
I would say it's unacceptable for me as well. So it's wow, there's been a lot of nuggets that you touched on. I absolutely love the energy, the passion that comes across, and you certainly have a beautiful, strong voice. And I think any young woman who would listen to this, or women who kind of are a little bit careful about, can I really say that out loud? I think if we all have the honesty that you have and the integrity to go, well, I'm coming from a place of knowledge, from a place of compassion, not just passion, and power can be used in such a positive way to really touch the people around us, because they feel you that lighthouse. I think that is a really beautiful quote for our audience. So I really, really enjoy that. Is there any parting nuggets that you would like to give our audience in terms of your key thing? If you go and say, well, redefining her success, what does it mean in one simple phrase? Can you coin that?
Well, that is a big topic to coin a single phrase. Yes.
What's the first thing that pops in? There you go. That right there.
Yeah. So I would say, don't limit yourself. You have so much to offer, regardless of what your strengths are. There are people that need you and that need your support and need your leadership and need your guidance. be there for other people, and just don't play small, right? There's no reason to. You are beautiful and will make the world a really special place with whatever talents you have.
Wow. I thank you so much, Abbey. It's been a pleasure to have you speak into all the things that you do. And for the audience, I hope you had some really, really key takeaways from this one. I'd love to hear about nuggets that you have. What have you learned? What has really resonated with your core as in the place that you are? And all our speakers have some messages for us to dive in with that all have created some beautiful gifts for you to download. And if you want to have the access to the training, go and get yourself the VIP ticket where you have the lifetime access of all the beautiful interviews, all the gifts from our speakers, and obviously you get the training. So if you liked Abbey and all the gold she's presented, you can go and learn so much more as you dive in deeper. So I hope I will have all of your comments, and I hope to see you for our next speaker today. Thank you.